By 9:30 on Monday morning, Lady Agatha Fenwick had already denied bread to 3 widows, corrected the rector twice, and ordered the parish clerk to move the charity table 6 inches nearer the market cross so that every respectable family in Nethercombe might see her generosity. Beatrice stood at her mother's right hand with a basket of linen-wrapped loaves against her hip and watched a hungry child stare at the crumbs caught in the wicker. The September air held a damp chill, though the square was crowded enough to smell of wool, horse sweat, yeast, and the sharp smoke of coal carts passing toward Winchester. Lady Fenwick wore dove-coloured silk beneath a dark pelisse, an outfit chosen to suggest restraint while costing more than the morning's entire distribution. Each recipient approached beneath her measured gaze, received an ivory token stamped with a wheat sheaf, and crossed to Mrs. Bell's bakery counter for a loaf. Gratitude was expected to be visible. Need was expected to be tidy. "Stand straighter, Beatrice," Lady Fenwick murmured without turning her head. "You look as though you are attending a burial." Beatrice adjusted the basket. "Some of them have buried children this year." Her mother's mouth tightened. Compassion is not improved by vulgar observation. Across the square, a man waited apart from the line. He wore a dark coat rubbed pale at the seams, boots crusted with old road mud, and a blue-black beard that looked several days neglected rather than deliberately fashionable. He was too tall to disappear, yet he had placed himself beside the stone trough where no one needed to notice him. A scar crossed his left palm when he shifted the worn glove tucked beneath one arm. Another mark, lighter and older, touched the edge of his jaw. He did not beg. That, more than the condition of his clothes, drew Beatrice's attention. Men who had learned to ask for food usually watched the hand that held it. This man watched the table, the numbered tokens, the clerk's tally, and the distance between Lady Fenwick's walnut box and Mrs. Bell's counter. His gaze was steady, educated, and entirely out of place. Lady Fenwick noticed him only when he stepped forward after the last laborer had received a token. "Your name?" she asked. "Edmund Wycliffe." His voice was low and controlled. The faint roughness in it might have come from cold, fatigue, or military command. "Parish?" "None that would satisfy you." A whisper moved through the women gathered near the pump. Lady Fenwick drew one gloved finger across the edge of the walnut box. "Then you have no claim upon this relief. I understood it was given according to need. Need without settlement becomes disorder." Her gaze dropped to his coat. "Unknown men arrive, take what belongs to honest families, and vanish before they can be held to account. They are the fathers of disorder." The insult landed without altering his posture. Only his scarred hand closed once at his side. Beatrice felt heat rise beneath her collar. "Mamma, there are loaves remaining." "Those are accounted for." "They are on the table." "And they are accounted for." Lady Fenwick turned to the clerk. "Close the distribution." The clerk dipped his pen and marked the final line. Mrs. Bell covered the bakery basket with cloth. Several unused ivory tokens remained in the walnut box, their red numbers bright against the dark wood. Beatrice saw one at the top. Number 47. A chip had broken from its lower edge. Edmund Wycliffe looked at the tokens, then at her mother. "I see," he said. There was no plea in his voice. That made the refusal feel worse. He turned away. Beatrice set down the basket before she had time to weigh obedience against consequence. Her fingers entered the walnut box. The chip token was cool and smooth against her palm. "Beatrice!" Her mother's voice sharpened. She crossed the 2 steps between the tables and the trough. Edmund had heard her approach. He turned before she spoke. Up close, she saw that exhaustion had drawn fine lines beside his eyes, but those eyes were clear. Grey, perhaps, or blue beneath the shadow of his brow. She held out the token. "Take it." He did not. "Was it given to you to distribute?" "It was left after the distribution was declared complete." "That isn't an answer." No, her pulse beat hard in her throat. "It wasn't given to me." "Then I can't take it without making your act mine." Beatrice almost laughed, though nothing was amusing. The only man in the square dressed like a beggar was also the only one unwilling to profit from her defiance. You can take it because there is bread, and you require bread.
Do I?
You have waited here since before the bell struck 9. His gaze flickered, not with embarrassment but surprise.
You noticed?
Yes.
And if I take it?
Then Mrs. Bell will give you a loaf. I meant what happens to you. Before Beatrice could answer, carriage wheels ground over the cobbles. A glossy bay pair stopped beside the market cross. Sir Marcus Thane descended without waiting for his groom to lower the step properly. He was broad across the shoulders, impeccably dressed, and carried the polished assurance of a man who had never been required to wonder whether a door would open for him. He removed one glove as he approached.
Miss Fenwick.
His smile did not reach his eyes. Lady Fenwick tells me you have not yet provided the answer we discussed. Beatrice closed her fingers around token 47. We did not discuss it. You proposed, and my mother told me what I was expected to say. A distinction without importance. Sir Marcus glanced at Edmund and then dismissed him. Your mother has been patient. My mother has been persistent. Beatrice, Lady Fenwick warned from behind them. Sir Marcus stepped closer. You are 29. Your father left no son, and your mother's circumstances are not improved by sentimental resistance. I offer security, position, and a respectable household. You offer instructions. A wife requires guidance. His hand closed around Beatrice's wrist. He did not squeeze hard enough to cause pain, but he pulled as though her body were already subject to his intention. Edmund moved before anyone else. He did not seize Sir Marcus. He did not raise his voice. He merely stepped between them with such precise authority that the space itself seemed to change.
Release her.
Sir Marcus stared at him. You forget yourself. No, Edmund's gaze dropped to the hand around Beatrice's wrist. You have mistaken silence for permission. The market square quieted. Sir Marcus released her, more from disbelief than obedience. A red band marked Beatrice's skin where his fingers had pressed. Edmund saw it. His expression did not alter, but something colder entered his eyes. Lady Fenwick came forward, pale with controlled fury. You have made yourself ridiculous enough for one morning, Beatrice. Apologize to Sir Marcus, return that token, and come home. Beatrice rubbed her wrist once. No, the single word seemed to strike her mother harder than any argument. Lady Fenwick's chin lifted. No respectable man will marry a disobedient woman of 29 who mistakes insolence for principle. The villagers heard. Mrs. Bell heard. The clerk heard. Sir Marcus smiled as if humiliation had completed the work persuasion could not. Beatrice looked at the man in the worn coat. Edmund Wycliffe still had not taken the token. He stood beside her without touching her, without speaking for her, and without looking away from the choice gathering inside her. Years of obedience pressed against the back of her teeth. Years of being useful but never trusted. Years of accepting that her judgment mattered only when it matched her mother's. She opened her hand and placed the chipped ivory token into Edmund's scarred palm. Then I would sooner marry the beggar beside me than Sir Marcus Thane. Someone gasped. Lady Fenwick went utterly still. Sir Marcus gave a short, contemptuous laugh. Edmund did not. His fingers closed around token number 47. His gaze held hers with an intensity that stripped the square of every other face. Then don't say it, he said quietly, unless you are prepared to choose the life attached to it. Beatrice heard the church clock begin to strike 10. She heard her mother draw breath to command her again. She heard the soft click of ivory against Edmund's palm. For the first time in her life, none of those sounds decided her answer. Ask me tomorrow, she said. I'll mean it then. Beatrice did not sleep until long after midnight, and when sleep finally came, it brought no peace. She dreamed of the market square emptied of people, the walnut box open beneath the cross, and token number 47 resting alone in Edmund Wycliffe's palm while her mother's voice repeated the same verdict from every doorway. Disobedient. Ridiculous. Unwanted. By dawn, the redness around Beatrice's wrist had faded to a pale shadow, but the memory of Sir Marcus's hand remained sharper than the mark. She dressed without assistance because Anne, her maid of 6 years, had been dismissed from personal service before supper. Lady Fenwick had announced the decision in the drawing-room with the composure of a woman changing a table arrangement. Anne had not been turned out of the household, only reassigned to the laundry, where she could no longer carry messages, accompany Beatrice on calls, or witness private conversations. The punishment was designed to reach 2 women at once. Beatrice fastened her own cuffs, pinned her hair more plainly than usual, and descended to breakfast. Lady Fenwick sat behind the silver coffee service. Sir Marcus's unopened card lay beside her plate. "You will remain indoors today," she said. "The carriage is not available to you." Beatrice took her usual chair. "Is it required elsewhere?" "It is not available to you." "I understood the first time." Her mother poured coffee, though neither of them touched it. "You will write an apology to Sir Marcus. You will also send word to that man that yesterday's spectacle was an emotional mistake. His name is Edmund Wycliffe. His name is whatever he finds useful. He refused to take advantage of me. A practiced man often does. It makes the advantage appear to be yours." Beatrice folded her hands beneath the table. She had spent the night asking herself the questions her mother intended as weapons. What did she know of him? Very little. He had the posture of a soldier, the speech of an educated man, and a scar across his left palm. He had waited for bread without pleading. He had protected her without touching her. He had refused both charity and marriage until she accepted responsibility for offering them. None of that proved he was safe. It did prove that he had treated her judgment with more seriousness in 10 minutes than her family had in 10 years. "I will meet him this morning," Beatrice said. Lady Fenwick set down the coffee pot. "You will do no such thing. I gave him my word. A daughter's word cannot outrank her mother's authority. I am 29. The silence that followed had weight. Lady Fenwick's face did not soften. "Your age makes yesterday more shameful, not less." Beatrice rose. "Then I am old enough to bear the shame myself." She left before her courage could be turned into argument. With the carriage denied, she walked the 2 miles to St. Anne's beneath a grey September sky. The road was damp from night rain, and her boots gathered mud along the verges. By the time the square came into view, she was cold, breathless, and more certain than she had been when she left home. Edmund waited beside the churchyard wall. He wore the same mended coat, though it had been brushed clean, and the blue-black shadow on his jaw had been shaved away. He looked less like a beggar in daylight. That realization unsettled her more than it reassured her. Reverend Thomas Ainsley stood nearby with a ring of keys in one hand and concern plainly written across his face. Edmund's gaze moved first to Beatrice's wrist. The remaining mark was almost hidden beneath her glove. He did not ask about it. "You came," he said. "I told you I would." People say many things under humiliation. So do people under hunger. His expression shifted by the smallest degree. And which one was speaking yesterday? A woman who had finally heard herself clearly. Reverend Ainsley opened the vestry door and ushered them inside before any passerby could gather. The room smelled of old paper, beeswax, and damp stone. A narrow table stood beneath the window. Beatrice sat on one side, Edmund on the other, while the rector remained at the head like a cautious magistrate who wished he were discussing roof repairs. Token number 47 was not visible. Beatrice assumed it remained with Edmund, exactly where she had placed it. "Before either of you speaks of bans," Reverend Ainsley said, "I must understand whether this is a considered intention or an effort to punish Lady Fenwick." Edmund looked at Beatrice. "I won't marry her merely because she wishes to defy her mother." "You presume that I do." "I presume nothing. That is why I asked you to return." His voice was quiet, but not gentle enough to flatter. "If you marry me, you must understand what you believe you're choosing. I have no house suitable for a lady. I am lodging in the sexton's cottage. I possess enough for food, rent, and a plain household, but not the life in which you were raised. How long have you lived there?
More than a month.
And before that?
A pause followed. Elsewhere.
Reverend Ainsley cleared his throat. Edmund did not look at him. Beatrice noticed the exchange.
Your name is truly Edmund Wycliffe? She asked.
Yes.
You were a cavalry captain?
Yes.
Are you married?
No, betrothed.
No, in debt?
No, wanted for any crime.
One corner of his mouth almost moved.
No,
then what are you not telling me?
The almost smile disappeared. The world has placed other words around my name. I am not prepared to give you all of them today. Beatrice felt a cold thread of warning.
Why?
Because I need to know whether you would choose the man in front of you without being commanded by whatever those words might mean. That sounds very much like a test.
It is.
I dislike tests whose rules are hidden.
So do I.
His gaze held hers. Yet you asked me to marry you without knowing whether I sleep beneath a roof.
The truth struck cleanly.
Beatrice looked down at her gloved hands. Then we are both guilty of asking too much from ignorance. Reverend Ainsley leaned forward. Mr. Wycliffe has shown me documents sufficient to establish his legal name and his ability to support a modest wife. I have seen nothing that suggests fraud. I have not been told every detail of his circumstances. Edmund did not object. Beatrice considered him in silence. If we proceed, he said, there will be 3 conditions.
Only 3?
For now. The banns will be read lawfully. You may withdraw at any point before the marriage. And I will make no physical claim upon you without trust freely given. Reverend Ainsley looked relieved by the first condition and embarrassed by the third. Beatrice felt heat rise beneath her collar, but she did not look away. I have one condition of my own.
Name it.
You will never use gratitude as obedience. If I marry you, I will not become indebted to you for allowing me to escape someone else. Edmund's face went still.
Agreed.
And you will not speak for me when I can speak for myself. That makes 2 conditions. You said only that you had 3. This time the faint smile appeared. It changed him. Not enough to make him handsome in any conventional sense, but enough to reveal warmth he guarded carefully. Agreed, he said again. Reverend Ainsley drew a sheet of paper toward him. Both of you are of full age. Both declare yourselves unmarried. If there is no lawful impediment, the first banns may be read on Sunday. Beatrice heard her mother's voice in memory. She also heard Edmund's question from the square.
Will you still mean it tomorrow?
She placed her hand flat upon the table. I will return tomorrow because I choose to, not because she drove me here. Edmund's gaze dropped briefly to her hand, then lifted to her face. Then I will be here. Their fingers brushed when he returned the written list of conditions. He did not close his hand over hers. He waited until she chose to take the page. After Beatrice left the vestry, Edmund remained behind long enough to write a short note. He folded it once and addressed it to Mr. Abel Norton at Belgrave Park. His instructions were precise. Maintain silence. Prepare nothing public. Intervene only if legal danger arose. By noon, the note was riding 5 miles across Hampshire. At Fenwick Dower House, Lady Fenwick was already informing Sir Marcus that Beatrice's marriage could not be stopped by persuasion. A man without settlement, however, might still be removed before the first banns were ever heard. The first banns were read beneath the painted rafters of St. Anne's on a Sunday morning so still that Beatrice could hear the rustle of every prayer book turned in the pews behind her. Reverend Ainsley's voice remained steady, but his fingers tightened slightly on the page as he announced the intention of Edmund Wycliffe, bachelor, and Beatrice Fenwick, spinster, both of the parish. A murmur passed through the congregation before the rector had finished. Lady Fenwick sat 3 pews behind Beatrice in mourning grey, her spine rigid, her face composed with such severity that no one could mistake silence for consent. Sir Marcus Thane occupied the pew beside her. He did not look at Beatrice during the reading. He watched Edmund. Edmund stood on the opposite side of the aisle in his brushed but mended coat, his expression unreadable. The blue wool scarf Beatrice had given him was folded once around his neck. Token number 47 remained in the inner pocket of his waistcoat, where he had kept it since the market square. When Reverend Ainsley asked whether any lawful impediment existed, Lady Fenwick did not rise. She had no legal objection to offer. Beatrice was 29, Edmund had presented his true name and declared himself unmarried, and the rector had seen sufficient proof of his ability to maintain a modest household. Yet Lady Fenwick's silence carried its own threat. She left the church before the final hymn, Sir Marcus following close behind. By the time Beatrice and Edmund stepped into the churchyard, a parish constable waited beside the lych gate with Sir Marcus and two curious farmers standing near enough to hear. "Mr. Wycliffe," Sir Marcus called, a word. Edmund stopped. Beatrice remained at his side, though every rule of her upbringing urged her to withdraw from a dispute between men. Sir Marcus glanced at her, displeased by her refusal to leave. "The constable has received a concern regarding your settlement," he said. "You appeared in this parish without known employment, family, or property. A man in such circumstances may become chargeable." The constable shifted his hat between his hands. He looked uncomfortable rather than eager. Edmund's face did not change. "You are alleging that I have no lawful residence. I am asking you to prove that you do. You were not so interested in proof when you called me a beggar." Sir Marcus's mouth hardened. "You will answer the constable." Edmund reached inside his coat and produced a folded paper, not from the pocket that held the token but from an inner breast pocket secured by a button. He gave it directly to the constable. A receipt for rent paid to the churchwardens for the sexton's cottage. The term began more than a month ago. Reverend Ainsley had followed them from the porch. "That is correct," he said. "Mr. Wycliffe has resided there continuously. He has paid in advance and caused no disturbance." Sir Marcus looked at the receipt, then at the rector. "A man may pay for a room with stolen coin." Beatrice drew breath, but Edmund spoke first. "Then accuse me of theft and name the owner." His tone did not rise. It sharpened. The constable lowered the paper. "Sir Marcus, I was asked to determine whether the gentleman had residence." "He does." "Gentleman?" Sir Marcus repeated with contempt. "He wears poverty like a costume." For the briefest moment, Edmund's gaze became distant, as though the sentence had touched something Sir Marcus could not see. Then he looked back at him. "Clothing does not alter a receipt." Sir Marcus stepped closer to Reverend Ainsley. "You risk your standing by encouraging this spectacle." Edmund moved between them with the same quiet precision he had shown in the market square. "The rector has answered a lawful question. You will not punish him for disappointing you." Sir Marcus stared at him. "You speak as though you possess authority here." "No. I speak as though you do not possess all of it." The farmers near the gate lowered their eyes to hide their interest. Beatrice felt something within her loosen. Edmund did not defeat Sir Marcus by claiming rank or wealth. He used only facts, patience, and the certainty of a man accustomed to being obeyed without needing to demand it. That certainty should have troubled her. Instead, it made her wonder again what words the world had placed around his name. Sir Marcus took the receipt from the constable, read it once more, then returned it with visible reluctance. "This will not make you suitable." Edmund folded the paper and put it back into the same inner pocket. Suitability was not the question. Lady Fenwick waited by her carriage and watched Beatrice from across the churchyard. Her expression promised consequences. Beatrice met her gaze without moving toward her. The carriage departed without Beatrice, just as it had arrived. Edmund looked after it. "You may still withdraw." "So may you." "I know." "Then we are equally trapped by our own freedom." His mouth almost softened. That is one way to describe it. During the 2 weeks that followed, the second and third banns were read without legal objection, though every reading drew a larger congregation. Nethercombe had not enjoyed such anticipation in years. Beatrice walked to the village because the Fenwick carriage remained unavailable to her. Reverend Ainsley's widowed sister accompanied her on 2 occasions, and Mrs. Bell's sister joined them once, preserving propriety without smothering conversation. Edmund never complained of the attention. He also never attempted to charm the onlookers. Their walks took them along hedged lanes, across a fallow field, and once beside the narrow stream south of the church where willows bent over brown water. He told Beatrice that he had served in the cavalry and had learned hunger in places where officers and enlisted men alike waited for supply wagons that did not come. "You spoke as if contempt could spoil bread," she said. "It can't spoil the loaf," he answered. "It can make a man hate himself for eating it." "Did that happen to you?" "Not in the way you mean. You answer honestly and still manage not to answer. It is a skill. A dangerous one in a husband." He glanced at her. "Then you had better continue noticing it." She told him, in return, about the years after her father's death. Sir Alistair Fenwick had left no son, and the baronetcy had passed elsewhere. Lady Fenwick's household had narrowed, but her need for control had grown. Beatrice had managed correspondence, accounts, servants' disputes, and charitable lists, yet every decision was presented publicly as her mother's. "You were trusted with work," Edmund said, "but not with judgment." "Precisely. That is not trust." His answer was so immediate that she stopped walking. No one had ever named the distinction for her. He looked back. "Have I offended you?" "No," she resumed beside him. "You have made several years of my life sound simpler than they felt." Simple is not the same as easy. On the afternoon before the 3rd banns, they visited Mrs. Bell's bakery counter. The shop smelled of flour and warm crust. Mrs. Bell glanced nervously toward the door before speaking. "I remember the token," she said. "Number 47. Chipped at the bottom." Edmund took it from his inner waistcoat pocket and showed it in his palm without surrendering it. "Was it redeemed here?" "No." Her eyes moved to Beatrice. "Lady Fenwick instructed me not to give bread to unnamed wanderers. She said the committee would account for all tokens regardless." "Regardless of whether they were used?" Beatrice asked. Mrs. Bell pressed her lips together. "I should not have said that." "Why?" Edmund asked. "Because Sir Marcus controls the lease on these premises, and he has already asked whether I am helping you." Edmund closed his fingers around the token and returned it to the same pocket. His expression hardened, but his voice remained controlled. "You will not be asked to risk your livelihood for us." "Sometimes risk is not invited," Mrs. Bell said quietly. "It simply arrives." They left without pressing her further. Rain had softened the lane, and at a narrow ditch crossing, Beatrice's boot slipped against the muddy edge. Edmund offered his hand. He did not reach for her. He waited. She placed her gloved fingers in his, and his grip closed carefully around them. The scar beneath his glove made the center of his palm slightly uneven. He guided her across, then loosened his hold. Beatrice did not withdraw at once. For 3 quiet steps, they walked hand in hand while the village disappeared behind the hedge. "You may still lose everything comfortable by marrying me," he said. "Comfort is not the same as safety." "No, and poverty is not proof of virtue." "Certainly not." She looked at him. "But neither is rank." Something unreadable passed through his eyes. "No," he said. "Rank proves very little." He released her only when the lane widened. The 3rd banns were read the following morning. No lawful objection came. That evening, Sir Marcus stood in Lady Fenwick's drawing room with one hand resting on the mantel and promised that Beatrice would not leave St. Anne's as Edmund Wycliffe's wife. If the marriage could no longer be stopped, then the woman who had stolen parish property would be exposed before she crossed the church threshold. The morning of the wedding arrived cold enough to silver the grass along the churchyard wall, though no frost had settled on the road from Fenwick Dower House. Beatrice walked the final distance to St. Anne's beneath a pale October sky because her mother had not offered the carriage, and Beatrice had not asked for it. Reverend Ainsley's widowed sister accompanied her, carrying a small prayer book and saying little. There was nothing useful to say. Beatrice wore a dove-grey gown that had belonged to her for 3 years, newly pressed but not altered, with pearl buttons at the wrists and no lace except a narrow edging at the throat. She carried no flowers. Her wedding ring did not yet exist upon her hand, and the absence of it felt more honest than borrowed splendor. When she entered the church, every head turned. Lady Fenwick sat in the second pew beside Sir Marcus, both dressed as though attending a public duty rather than a marriage they had failed to prevent. Mrs. Bell stood near the rear with her sister. Joseph Pike, still in Lady Fenwick's service, waited by the side aisle with 2 other household servants. Edmund stood before the altar in a clean dark coat that remained visibly mended at one elbow. The blue wool scarf Beatrice had given him was folded once around his neck. It softened nothing about him. If anything, it made the severity of his expression more intimate, as though one small piece of her had already entered a life she had not yet seen. Token number 47 remained in the inner pocket of his waistcoat, where he had kept it since the market square. Beatrice knew its location only because he had shown it to Mrs. Bell and returned it there. He had not spent it. He had not returned it. He had carried the chipped ivory proof of her first act of defiance close to his heart for 3 weeks. Reverend Ainsley looked from one of them to the other. "You both remain willing?" Edmund answered first. "I do." His voice carried clearly through the small church. Beatrice looked at him, not at her mother. "I do." Lady Fenwick shifted behind her, the faint scrape of silk against wood sounding louder than it should have. The service began. Beatrice heard each familiar word with painful clarity. The prayers did not feel romantic. They felt grave. She understood that marriage would bind more than affection, more than hope, more than the satisfaction of denying Sir Marcus. It would bind property, residence, reputation, obedience in the eyes of society, and the daily shape of 2 lives. She repeated Edmund's name when instructed. Edmund Wycliffe. No title. No estate. No promise beyond the plain household he had described. When Reverend Ainsley asked who gave her, Lady Fenwick did not move. Beatrice had expected that. She stepped forward on her own. The rector hesitated for only a breath before continuing. Edmund's gaze did not leave hers. He made no triumphant glance toward the pews. He offered no reassurance she had not requested. When the moment came, he took a plain gold ring from Reverend Ainsley's hand. It was narrow, unadorned, and warm from having rested against the rector's palm. Edmund held it before Beatrice without touching her. "May I?" he asked quietly. It was not part of the service. It was part of their agreement. Beatrice extended her left hand. "Yes." His fingers closed carefully around hers. The uneven pressure of the old scar beneath his glove touched the side of her hand as he guided the ring into place. He did not hurry. He did not claim more than she had offered. The metal settled at the base of her finger, plain and certain. Beatrice repeated her vows. Edmund repeated his. For one instant, after Reverend Ainsley declared them husband and wife, no one moved. Beatrice felt neither rescued nor ruined. She felt the weight of a choice made in full view of those who believed she possessed none. Edmund offered his arm. She placed her hand upon it. Together they walked down the aisle. Mrs. Bell lowered her head as they passed, not in deference but in something like relief. Joseph Pike stared at the floor. Lady Fenwick remained seated until Beatrice reached the church porch. Then she rose. "One moment." Her voice stopped the congregation before anyone could spill into the churchyard. Beatrice turned. Sir Marcus stood beside her mother, satisfaction already sharpening his expression. Lady Fenwick approached with the walnut charity box held in both hands. The sight of it struck Beatrice more violently than an accusation spoken from empty air. "Before this spectacle is mistaken for virtue," Lady Fenwick said, "the parish should know what kind of woman has married today." Reverend Ainsley stepped forward. "Lady Fenwick, this is neither the time nor the place." "It is precisely the place. A church should not shelter theft." A stir moved through the doorway. Edmund's arm became still beneath Beatrice's hand. Lady Fenwick opened the walnut box. Several ivory tokens remained inside. 3 weeks ago, my daughter removed parish property without permission. Token number 47. She gave it to this man in order to create a display of charity and bind him to her gratitude. Sir Marcus looked toward the parish constable waiting beyond the gate. The groom also presented himself under circumstances calculated to deceive. He should be detained until his identity and intentions are established. Beatrice felt the blood leave her face. She had known the accusation might come. She had not expected her mother to choose the church steps before the vows had cooled upon her lips. "I took the token after you declared the distribution complete," Beatrice said. "There were loaves left." "You admit it, then?" "I admit what I did. Not what you have made it mean." Lady Fenwick lifted her chin. "You stole from the poor to purchase a husband." Edmund moved one step forward. He did not release Beatrice's arm. "She purchased nothing." Sir Marcus gestured toward the constable. "You are in no position to decide that. I am in every position to decide what compelled my own vows. You have given a name and a rent receipt. That does not make you respectable." Hoofbeats sounded beyond the churchyard wall. A carriage came hard along the lane, dark green with no crest displayed upon the door, followed by 2 mounted estate servants. It stopped beside the gate. A broad-shouldered man of about 48 descended before the groom could lower the step. His coat was sober, his boots marked by hurried travel, and his face held the controlled alarm of someone who had come because silence had become more dangerous than disclosure. Edmund saw him and went utterly still. "Mr. Norton," he said. The steward removed his hat. He crossed the churchyard through the gathered villagers, ignoring every curious stare. When he reached the porch, he bowed deeply. Not to Lady Fenwick. Not to Sir Marcus. To Edmund. "Your Grace," Abel Norton said, his voice carrying across the stones, "the Belgrave carriage is ready." The words emptied the air from the churchyard. Reverend Ainsley's face changed first. Mrs. Bell gripped her sister's arm. The constable lowered his hand. Lady Fenwick stared at Edmund as though rank itself had risen from the grave to accuse her. Sir Marcus gave a short, incredulous laugh that died when neither Norton nor the estate servants moved. Edmund removed his worn glove. The scar across his left palm showed clearly as he reached into his waistcoat and withdrew token number 47. He held it once in the open light, then returned it to the same inner pocket. "My name is Edmund Wycliffe," he said. "That was never false. I am the 7th Duke of Vainhurst." Lady Fenwick's fingers tightened around the walnut box. Her humiliation transformed so quickly into calculation that Beatrice almost recoiled. "Then my daughter must have known." "She did not." Edmund's answer cut cleanly through the whispering. Sir Marcus looked from the mended coat to the waiting carriage. "You allowed us to believe you were destitute. I allowed you to reveal what you believed a destitute man deserved." The force of the reversal struck the crowd, but Beatrice felt no triumph. She looked at her husband and saw every strange answer, every withheld fact, every moment when his authority had exceeded the life he claimed. "Why?" she asked. Edmund turned to her. The title had altered every face around them except his, yet she could no longer see him as she had 5 minutes before. "Beatrice! Would you have told me today?" He glanced toward Norton, then back to her. "Yes." "Before the vows?" Silence answered first. Beatrice's hand fell from his arm. "Would you have allowed me to marry you without knowing who you were if Sir Marcus had remained silent?" Edmund's jaw tightened. "My name was true. My vows were true. That isn't what I asked." He looked at her with the same steadiness he had shown in the market square, but now steadiness was not enough. "I don't know," he said. The honesty came too late to comfort her. Lady Fenwick stood behind them with the charity box. Sir Marcus stood stripped of social advantage. The villagers who had watched Beatrice marry poverty now faced a duchess. Every humiliation had reversed. None of it restored the choice she had believed she was making. Edmund opened the carriage door himself.
"You are not obliged to forgive me."
"No," Beatrice said. She looked at the plain gold ring on her hand, then entered the carriage.
"But I am obliged to understand what I have married."
Edmund followed only after she moved to the far side. Before the wheels began to turn, Beatrice spoke without looking at him. "At Belgrave, I want separate rooms." He did not argue. "You shall have them." The carriage carried them away from St. Anne's while Lady Fenwick, Sir Marcus, and half the parish remained standing beneath the church porch, watching the woman they had mocked leave as Her Grace, the Duchess of Vainhurst, and knowing she did not yet feel victorious. Belgrave Park appeared through the carriage window less than an hour after they left St. Anne's, its pale stone front rising beyond cedar trees and a sweep of damp autumn lawn. Beatrice had expected grandeur once she heard the title, yet expectation did not prepare her for the weight of it. The house did not merely stand upon the land. It governed the view. Long wings extended from the central block, windows reflected the lowering sky, and a broad flight of steps waited beneath a portico large enough to shelter half the congregation they had left behind. Edmund sat opposite her in the same mended coat, the blue scarf still folded at his throat. Token number 47 remained in the inner pocket of his waistcoat. She had seen him return it there at the church porch. He had not touched it since. Neither of them had spoken during the journey. The plain gold ring on Beatrice's hand seemed heavier each time the carriage turned. At the main entrance, 2 lines of servants waited under Abel Norton's direction. The steward had arrived ahead of them by the shorter estate road. Every face turned toward the carriage when it stopped. Edmund descended first, then stood beside the open door and offered his hand. Beatrice looked at it. 3 weeks earlier, she had taken that hand over a muddy ditch because he had waited for her consent. Now 20 servants watched to see whether their new duchess would accept the Duke's assistance. She placed her fingers in his, not because of the audience but because refusing for their benefit would make them part of a conflict they did not understand. He helped her down and released her immediately. Mr. Norton bowed. "Welcome to Belgrave Park, Your Grace." The title moved through the assembled servants in lowered heads and formal curtsies. Beatrice felt as though it belonged to someone standing behind her. "Thank you," she said. A housekeeper with iron-grey hair stepped forward to present the senior staff. Beatrice listened to names, repeated them correctly, and saw relief flicker across several faces when she did not demand that the introductions begin again. At the top of the steps, Edmund quietly said, "There is no need for a receiving line today." The housekeeper hesitated. "Your Grace, several tenants and neighboring families have already sent inquiries." "We could arrange, not today," Beatrice said. Her own voice surprised her with its steadiness. "I would prefer a quiet room." The housekeeper looked to Edmund. His expression cooled. "Her Grace has answered." The woman bowed at once. Of course. He had protected Beatrice's decision without speaking over it. The distinction was small. She noticed it anyway. Inside, Belgrave's entrance hall opened beneath a painted ceiling and a gallery of ancestral portraits. Wycliffe faces looked down from gilt frames, each one wearing some variation of authority, boredom, or inherited certainty. Beatrice wondered which expression Edmund had learned from them and which he had learned in war. A footman carried his worn travelling bag toward the staircase. Another approached Beatrice for instructions regarding luggage, then stopped when he realized she had brought almost none. Lady Fenwick had not permitted household servants to pack for her, and Beatrice had left with one small trunk prepared by Reverend Ainsley's sister. Edmund saw the trunk. His jaw tightened, but he made no comment. He addressed the housekeeper. "Prepare the blue guest chamber for Her Grace and the adjoining morning room for her private use. My rooms will remain in the west wing." The housekeeper's eyes widened only slightly. "Yes, Your Grace." Beatrice looked at him. "Thank you. You asked for separate rooms. Many men hear a request only until the door closes. Then the door will remain yours." He spoke without tenderness, as though binding himself to a military order. It should not have comforted her. It did. The blue chamber contained silk walls, a marble hearth, a dressing room larger than Beatrice's former bedchamber, and a bed hung with embroidered velvet. Jewel cases stood arranged on the dressing table beside gloves, ribbons, and a set of ivory-backed brushes. 3 gowns had already been laid across a chaise, each cut for a woman of approximately Beatrice's height. Their preparation proved that Edmund's household had known a duchess would arrive, even if the parish had not. Beatrice touched none of them. When the housekeeper explained that a modiste from Winchester could attend by the following morning, Beatrice answered, "No fittings. No jewels. No callers. Your Grace will require suitable dress for presentation. I will require time." The housekeeper glanced once toward Edmund, who stood near the open door. He did not intervene. "Time," Beatrice repeated, "is what I am asking for." "Very good, Your Grace." After the servants withdrew, Edmund remained on the threshold. He did not cross it. There is a smaller sitting room at the end of this corridor if this one feels too formal. Everything here feels formal. That may not improve quickly. Honesty would. He absorbed the blow without protest. "May I speak with you downstairs when you are ready? In a room with 2 doors." "Yes." An hour later, Beatrice joined him in a morning library overlooking the south lawn. The room was intimate by Belgrave standards, though its shelves rose higher than the ceilings at Fenwick Dower House. A fire burned low. Tea waited between 2 chairs placed far enough apart to make privacy feel safe rather than intimate. Edmund had changed into a dark, well-cut coat. The transformation disturbed her. The man from the market square had not vanished, but the clothes revealed how perfectly he belonged to the authority he had hidden. The blue scarf was no longer around his neck. It lay folded beside him on a small table. Token number 47 was also no longer on his person. Before she entered, he had placed it in the locked drawer of his escritoire in the adjoining study. He told her so before she could ask. "It is secured," he said. "No one has touched it except you and me." "Why keep it?" "Because it matters. To the inquiry. To me." She did not ask which answer he meant more. Edmund gestured toward the tea, then waited until she chose a chair. He remained standing until she Saturday. "I inherited the dukedom 11 weeks ago," he began. "The 6th Duke of Vainhurst was a distant cousin. He died without a son, and the title passed through a collateral line to me. You did not expect it." "No. I had spent years outside England and intended to remain away from court and inheritance politics as much as possible. Yet you came here disguised." "I came first as the Duke. Every tenant I questioned had been prepared. Every account was balanced before I saw it. Every committee member assured me that relief reached the households listed." He looked toward the window. "Then I rode through Nethercombe without the Belgrave carriage. A widow told me she had received no bread for 6 weeks, though her name appeared in the estate reimbursement papers. A labour said tokens were sometimes withheld unless gratitude was displayed publicly. When I returned openly, both accounts changed." Beatrice thought of the market square, the child watching crumbs, the unused tokens in her mother's box. "So you dressed as a destitute soldier to see what would happen." "I dressed as a man whose need could not profit anyone's reputation." "And my mother refused you?" "Yes." "Sir Marcus threatened the rector and tried to remove you?" "Yes." "You learned what you came to learn?" "Not all of it." Edmund sat opposite her. "Lady Fenwick and Sir Marcus both serve on the local relief committee. Belgrave reimburses approved distributions. The numbers appear complete. The people do not." Beatrice clasped her hands around one knee. "Why did you allow the marriage to proceed without telling me?" He looked at her directly. "Because I feared you would choose the title instead of the man. You had known me for 3 weeks. Long enough to know that you did not value me for wealth. Then why was that not enough?" His answer came slowly. "Because I did not trust what the title would do to the choice." Beatrice felt the wound beneath the explanation, but she refused to let it excuse the act. So you solved your uncertainty by creating mine. He went still. Yes. The single word was better than another defense. Then he began again. I believed that if the vows were true, if my name was true, if I intended to protect your freedom, there. Her voice stopped him. You are explaining why your reasons were serious. I am telling you the harm was serious too. Edmund lowered his gaze. The scar in his left palm showed when his fingers opened against his knee. You are right. Silence filled the space between them. He did not add that he meant well. He did not ask her to consider his childhood, his war service, or the burdens of rank. He let the admission remain unprotected. After a moment, he lifted the folded blue scarf from the table. This belongs to you. Beatrice looked at the careful mending she had done 2 winters earlier. It had warmed him while she still believed warmth was all she could give. Keep it. His eyes rose to hers. Why? Until I decide whether the man I gave it to existed. Pain crossed his face before discipline concealed it. He set the scarf back beside him. Very well. A knock sounded at the outer door. Mr. Norton entered with a silver tray bearing 3 sealed notes. Forgive me, your graces. These arrived from the village. Edmund broke none of the seals. Norton continued carefully. Lady Fenwick has informed several families that her grace knew of the dukedom before the wedding and arranged the appearance of poverty to secure the marriage. Sir Marcus has repeated the claim. Beatrice felt no surprise. Only clarity. Her mother had found a new shape for the same contempt. Edmund's hand moved toward the letters, then stopped. He looked at Beatrice instead. What do you wish done? The question mattered more than the notes. Nothing public yet. Agreed. And nothing private in my name. Agreed. Beatrice rose. The ring caught the firelight as she rested one hand on the back of the chair. Tomorrow, show me every relief record you possess. The reimbursement papers, committee lists, all of it. Edmund stood but did not approach her. You intend to examine them. I intend to understand what my mother is defending. She met his gaze. And you will let me decide what the records mean. This time he answered without hesitation. Yes. The next morning, Beatrice entered Edmund's study before the clock struck 9 and found the reimbursement papers already arranged across the central table. Mr. Norton stood beside the window with a leather portfolio beneath one arm. Edmund waited near the escritoire, dressed in a plain dark coat that carried no visible sign of rank except the ease with which the room appeared to belong to him. The blue wool scarf lay folded on the back of a nearby chair. He had kept it, as she had asked. Token number 47 remained inside the locked drawer of the escritoire until Beatrice arrived. Edmund took a small key from his waistcoat, opened the drawer in her presence, and removed the chipped ivory token. He placed it on the table beside the papers. No one has handled it since yesterday, he said. Beatrice looked at Mr. Norton. You have not examined it. No, Your Grace. Norton's answer came without hesitation. His Grace described it to me, but I have not touched it. Beatrice inclined her head. Good. Edmund gestured toward the nearest document. This is the reimbursement voucher submitted after the distribution in Nethercombe. Beatrice sat and drew the paper closer. The columns were clean, the figures orderly, the signatures precise. 80 numbered bread tokens had been issued to Lady Fenwick's committee group. 80 loaves had been certified as distributed. Belgrave Park had reimbursed the full amount. At the bottom appeared her mother's signature, followed by Sir Marcus Thane's countersignature 2 days later. Beatrice read the figures twice. Token 47 is included. Yes, Norton said. All 80 are. But Mrs. Bell said it was never redeemed. Edmund remained standing across from her. That is why the voucher matters. Beatrice touched the edge of the paper but did not move it. I removed the token only after my mother had ordered the distribution closed. The parish clerk had already marked the final line. You are certain? Norton asked. I was standing beside the box. I heard her tell him to close it. She looked at Edmund. You had already turned away. Yes. Then you did not see me take it. No. I saw you approach me with it. The distinction mattered. Beatrice was grateful he did not pretend to know more than he had witnessed. She looked again at the voucher. If all 80 tokens were later certified as distributed, then one entry was false before I touched the box, or the certification was made without checking what remained. Norton opened his portfolio and produced a copied schedule of the reimbursement dates. The payment was authorized after Sir Marcus signed. Belgrave's estate office did not inspect the unused tokens. The committee certification was accepted. Because my mother was considered trustworthy. Because Lady Fenwick and Sir Marcus were considered socially responsible, Edmund said. The bitterness in his voice was quiet. Society often mistakes position for evidence. Beatrice lifted token number 47 between finger and thumb. Its red number had faded slightly along one curve. The lower chip was unmistakable. Why did you not redeem it? She asked. Edmund looked at the token rather than her. Because once Mrs. Bell refused it under your mother's order, spending it elsewhere would have destroyed the question it raised. You understood that before I did. I suspected something before I met you. I did not know what. And now? Now I know the records are wrong. I do not yet know whether the cause was carelessness, theft, or a system designed to reward obedience. Beatrice held the token out to him. Edmund did not take it. It should remain with you, he said. It has remained with you since the market square. Because you gave it to me. I am giving it back. His words were deliberate. You should decide what happens to it next. Beatrice studied him. This was more than a transfer of ivory. He was yielding control of the object around which both accusation and proof might gather. She opened her palm. Edmund placed token number 47 into it without letting his fingers close over hers. The chip pressed lightly against her skin. From this moment, she said, it remains in my possession unless I transfer it before witnesses. Agreed. Norton nodded once, acknowledging the statement. Beatrice slipped the token into the small inner pocket of her reticule and fastened the clasp. Edmund watched the movement, then turned back to the papers. There is also a counterfoil book held in the vestry. Reverend Ainsley recorded the token assignments. Then we will see it today. We? Edmund asked. You said I would lead the questioning. You will. Then you may accompany me, but you will not answer for me. Understood. By noon, they had reached St. Anne's in the Belgrave carriage, accompanied by Mr. Norton and a married housemaid named Mrs. Croft. Beatrice had insisted upon witnesses not because she feared Edmund, but because every step now required a credibility that rumour could not easily break. Reverend Ainsley received them in the vestry. He looked uneasy when Beatrice requested the counterfoil book, though he unlocked the cabinet without objection. Lady Fenwick may regard this as a personal attack, he said. My mother has already made it personal, Beatrice replied. I would prefer to make it factual. He placed the book on the table. The entries listed numbers 1 through 80 under Lady Fenwick's distribution group. Beside token 47 appeared the same neat mark used for every token supposedly issued. Beatrice opened her reticule, removed the ivory token, and placed it beside the corresponding entry. The match was immediate. Same number. Same wheatsheaf stamp. Same chipped lower edge described by Mrs. Bell. Reverend Ainsley went pale. This should not be here. Where should it be? Beatrice asked. Redeemed at the bakery, then returned to the committee for accounting. Was every redeemed token returned? Mrs. Bell usually sent them in a cloth bag at the end of the week. Did you inspect the bag? He hesitated. Not personally. Lady Fenwick reported the total. Edmund said nothing. Beatrice felt his silence beside her as a form of discipline rather than absence. Then the book confirms only what was certified, she said. It does not confirm what occurred. Reverend Ainsley closed his eyes briefly. No, they crossed the square to Mrs. Bell's bakery, where the warmth of the oven struck Beatrice's face as soon as the door opened. Mrs. Bell's sister sat near the back table mending an apron. She rose when Edmund entered, but he asked her to remain seated. Beatrice placed token number 47 on the counter. You told us this was never redeemed. Mrs. Bell looked toward the window before answering. It wasn't. How can you be certain? Because of the chip. I remember every damaged token. They catch in the drawer. She touched the counter but not the ivory. Lady Fenwick's group usually returned the unused ones to her own box. I never saw that one until Mr. Wycliffe showed it to me. Did you receive payment for 80 loaves? Mrs. Bell's face tightened. The committee paid my account according to the number they certified. Not according to the number you redeemed. I submitted my own count. Sir Marcus's clerk adjusted it. Edmund's posture changed, but he remained silent. Beatrice leaned closer. Adjusted it upward. Mrs. Bell nodded. He said the committee had distributed 80, so the account must show 80. I told him fewer had come through my counter. Did you sign the altered total? No. He said my signature was unnecessary because the committee chairs would certify it. Beatrice looked at the token. The mystery was no longer vague. A false number had travelled from her mother's box to Sir Marcus's counter-signature and then into Belgrave's payment. Will you state this before Reverend Ainsley? Mrs. Bell's hands closed around the edge of her apron. Sir Marcus controls my lease. The words were barely above a whisper. If he ends it, I lose the ovens, the rooms above, everything. Edmund spoke then. I can purchase the lease today. Beatrice turned toward him. No, he met her gaze. She requires protection. She requires protection that does not make her testimony look bought. Mrs. Bell looked between them. Edmund's jaw tightened. For a moment, Beatrice saw the commander in him reach for the fastest solution. Then he let it go. You are right, he said. The admission came without defense. Mrs. Bell drew a careful breath. I will not testify yet. We will not force you, Beatrice said. But no one should threaten you for telling the truth. Outside the bakery, rain had begun to mist across the square. Edmund offered Beatrice his hand as she stepped down from the threshold. She placed her fingers in his, and this time she did not release them when both feet reached the stones. He looked at their joined hands with quiet surprise. At Waterloo, he said after a moment, command meant choosing quickly because delay killed men. I learned to believe that action was always kinder than uncertainty. Beatrice held his hand more firmly. And afterward, I kept commanding problems that were not soldiers. His voice roughened. Men I could not save still visit me in sleep. Money, orders, titles. None of them bring those men back. She felt the old scar beneath his glove, an uneven line across his palm. Protection becomes love only when the person being protected remains free. Edmund looked at her as though the sentence had entered somewhere armor could not cover. I do not know how to stand beside what I cannot command. Then learn beside me. He turned his hand beneath hers, not to possess it, but to hold it openly. They remained that way until Mr. Norton approached from the church. He carried word that Lady Fenwick had requested a county charity assembly at Belgrave. Her stated purpose was to defend her management of parish relief. Her true purpose was written plainly in the final line. She intended to accuse her daughter before every subscriber in Hampshire. By the afternoon appointed for the county charity assembly, Belgrave's public room had filled with subscribers, neighbouring landowners, parish officers, and enough curious guests to make privacy impossible. The long windows admitted a cold, colourless light. Chairs had been arranged in formal rows facing a raised platform, and a table stood at the front beneath the Wycliffe crest with water, writing paper, and the committee's counterfoil book placed neatly at one end. Beatrice entered beside Edmund wearing a dark blue gown without jewels, ribbons, or any ornament beyond the plain gold ring on her left hand. She had chosen the gown because it gave no one the right to call her either penitent or triumphant. Token number 47 remained inside the fastened inner pocket of her reticule. She had kept it there since Edmund placed it in her hand outside the estate office, and no one had touched it since. The blue wool scarf remained with Edmund in his private rooms at Belgrave. He had not worn it publicly that day. The room rose when they entered. Beatrice felt the change in every face. Women who had once overlooked her now lowered their heads. Men who had considered her marriage absurd waited to see whether a duchess could be shamed more completely than Miss Fenwick had been. Lady Fenwick stood near the front beside Sir Marcus Thane. Her mourning grey had been replaced by black silk trimmed with restrained jet, as though injury rather than accusation had brought her there. Sir Marcus wore an expression of solemn concern. It was the expression powerful men used when they intended cruelty to appear civic. Edmund escorted Beatrice to the platform and pulled out her chair. He did not touch her shoulder or ask whether she wished to leave. Before sitting beside her, he leaned close enough for only her to hear. "You decide when we speak." "I decide whether I speak," she answered. His gaze held hers. "Yes." Mr. Norton remained below the platform with the Belgrave papers locked inside a leather case. Reverend Ainsley sat in the first row, visibly uneasy. Mrs. Bell was absent. Her empty chair near the aisle seemed to Beatrice more important than half the people who had attended. Sir Marcus opened the assembly by praising the county's tradition of private benevolence. He spoke of duty, order, and the danger of allowing scandal to weaken public confidence in charitable institutions. Beatrice listened without moving. Every phrase concealed a threat. If she challenged the committee, she would be accused of harming the poor. If she remained silent, her mother's version would become fact. Sir Marcus concluded by turning toward Lady Fenwick. "Lady Fenwick has requested the opportunity to address a matter that touches both parish property and the reputation of this county." Lady Fenwick approached the table carrying the counterfoil book from St. Anne's Vestry. Reverend Ainsley rose sharply. "That volume is normally held under church custody." "You permitted the committee to review it," she replied. "I brought it directly from the vestry this morning in the presence of the clerk." Reverend Ainsley looked toward Beatrice, troubled but unable to dispute the stated transfer. Lady Fenwick placed the book upon the table and opened it to the page listing tokens 1 through 80. Her gloved finger stopped beside number 47. "3 weeks ago, at the Nethercombe bread distribution, my daughter removed a parish token from the committee box without permission. She gave it to a man she believed destitute. That man later proved to be the Duke of Vanehurst." A whisper passed through the room. Beatrice saw curiosity sharpen into suspicion. Lady Fenwick continued. Her Grace would now have this county believe that the committee committed wrongdoing. Yet the record clearly shows token 47 assigned within the full distribution. She turned a page toward the subscribers. "The true question is not whether the committee accounted for the token. It did. The true question is why my daughter took it, and whether she already knew the rank of the man she intended to bind with a display of charity." Sir Marcus rose. "The concealment of His Grace's identity has been much discussed. It is possible that not everyone was equally deceived." Edmund's chair moved slightly, but he remained seated. Beatrice felt the effort it cost him. "Are you accusing me of knowing his identity before the wedding?" she asked. Sir Marcus inclined his head. "I am suggesting that your actions deserve explanation." "Then ask plainly." His eyes cooled. "Did you know Edmund Wycliffe was the Duke of Vanehurst when you gave him the token?" "No." "Did you suspect he was a man of fortune?" "No." "Did you take token 47 from Lady Fenwick's box?" The room became very still. Beatrice opened her reticule, placed one hand inside, and felt the chipped edge beneath her fingers. She did not remove it. "Not yet." "Yes," she said. A stronger murmur followed. Lady Fenwick lowered her eyes as though pained by the admission. Sir Marcus took one step toward the platform. "Then there is no dispute regarding the theft." "There is every dispute regarding the word you have chosen. The token was not yours." "No, you took it without permission. After my mother declared the distribution complete while unused tokens remained in the box." Lady Fenwick's expression tightened. That does not alter ownership. It alters the meaning. Meaning is not accounting. Then let us discuss accounting. Beatrice looked toward Mr. Norton's locked case. The Belgrave reimbursement voucher records payment for all 80 tokens, including the one in my possession. Mrs. Bell states that token 47 was never redeemed at her bakery. Sir Marcus's face remained composed. Mrs. Bell is not present. Because someone has made her fear the loss of her lease. His voice sharpened. That is an outrageous insinuation. Then it should be easy to disprove. Several subscribers shifted. Lady Fenwick closed the counterfoil book with a firm hand. This assembly was not called so that my daughter might divert attention from her own act. I am not diverting attention. I am admitting it. Beatrice stood. I took token 47. I gave it to a man who had been refused bread because he could not offer my mother a respectable parish name. I did not know he was a duke. I did not know he possessed a shilling beyond what he wore. I knew only that there were loaves left and that need had been turned away. A woman in the second row whispered that charity could not be governed by impulse. A gentleman behind her demanded to know whether Belgrave funds were missing. Another voice asked whether the committee would repay the estate. The questions rose quickly, overlapping until the room no longer listened to Beatrice's explanation. If the accounts are disputed, one subscriber called, the duchy must protect the fund at once. Edmund stood. The movement silenced them more effectively than any command. His face was controlled, but Beatrice saw the old instinct in him. Action. Immediate, decisive, protective. Belgrave will repay every disputed sum, he said. No recipient will suffer while the committee's records are examined. The word struck Beatrice harder than Lady Fenwick's accusation. Lady Fenwick turned toward the room with restrained sorrow. There. Even His Grace recognizes that restitution is required. Sir Marcus added, a generous and honourable resolution. Beatrice looked at Edmund. He had meant to shield the poor, the parish, and her. Yet in one sentence he had made the truth appear purchasable. Withdraw it, she said. He looked at her. Beatrice, until the accounts are settled, you have made my innocence sound like an expense you can afford. Pain crossed his face. That was not my intention. Your intention is not what they heard. She stepped away from the table. They heard a duke offer money because his wife admitted taking a token. They heard repayment where I asked for proof. I will correct it. Not by speaking over me again. Lady Fenwick watched them with the first hint of satisfaction she had shown all afternoon. Sir Marcus folded his hands behind his back. The room had stopped questioning the committee. Now it watched the marriage. Beatrice closed her reticule over token number 47 and descended from the platform. Edmund did not attempt to stop her. She paused beside him only long enough to speak where the subscribers could hear. I will not return to this room until the repayment offer is withdrawn publicly and in writing. Then she walked through the silent assembly with her head high, refusing to become either the thief they accused or the duchess they expected a powerful husband to rescue. By 8 o'clock the following morning, Edmund's written withdrawal of the repayment offer lay upon the desks of every principal subscriber who had attended the assembly. He did not soften it with explanation. He stated that the offer had been made without Beatrice's consent, that it had implied fault before evidence was heard, and that no Belgrave money would be used to close a question that required proof. He signed the statement as Duke of Vainhurst, then ordered copies delivered to St. Anne's, the Nethercombe Committee Rooms, and Sir Marcus Thane's estate. Beatrice read the original in the smaller morning room overlooking Belgrave's service court. She had moved there from the grand suite before breakfast, taking only her clothes, writing case, and the reticule containing token number 47. She had not left the marriage, the house, or the ring on her finger. She had left the ceremonial rooms in which every curtain, jewel case, and silver bell seemed to insist that comfort should silence injury. The smaller room held a plain desk, 2 straight-backed chairs, and a window from which she could see kitchen carts entering beneath the archwork move below her without pretense. She preferred it. Edmund stood near the door while she finished reading. He had not entered until she invited him. "It says what I asked," she said. "It says what I should have understood before you had to ask." That is not the same thing. No, he did not seek mercy in the distinction. "I have also sent word that the counterfoil book must be returned to Reverend Ainsley's custody. Lady Fenwick obtained it for committee review yesterday. It will not remain at Belgrave or with her." Beatrice folded the statement once and placed it on the desk. "Good. Do you want me at the vestry?" "Yes, but not as the person directing the inventory." "Who will?" "I will." His gaze rested on her face. "Then tell me what you require." The question was new enough to create a silence. Beatrice opened her reticule and touched the fastened inner pocket without removing the token. "Reverend Ainsley. 2 witnesses who are not beholden to my mother or Sir Marcus. The counterfoil book. The reimbursement voucher may remain in Mr. Norton's custody, but I want its location recorded. Token 47 will be sealed and removed from my possession." Edmund's expression changed. "You are surrendering it." "I am transferring it." "There is a difference." "To whom?" "Reverend Ainsley, as custodian. If I continue carrying it, Sir Marcus will say I altered or replaced it. There is only one token marked 47. We know that. I intend to make it difficult for anyone else to pretend otherwise." He inclined his head. "I will arrange the carriage." "And nothing more?" "Nothing more." She studied him for a moment. "No money offered to Mrs. Bell. No private visit to Sir Marcus. No threat against his leases or contracts." His jaw tightened at the last condition. He is pressuring a woman's livelihood. Then we protect her from intimidation. We do not purchase the answer we want. If he removes her from the bakery before she can speak, we record the pressure. We find lawful shelter after her account is given, not before. Edmund looked toward the service court, where a groom led a restless horse beneath the arch. The old instinct to command remained visible in the stillness of his shoulders. "Very well." Beatrice rose. "Do not say it as though you are yielding to me." He looked back at her. "How should I say it?" "As though we have agreed upon the same principle." Something in his face eased, though not enough to become a smile. "Then we agree." By noon, the counterfoil book had been returned to St. Anne's. Reverend Ainsley placed it on the vestry table before Beatrice, Edmund, Mr. Norton, and 2 neutral witnesses, Mr. Hale, a retired surgeon who leased no land from Sir Marcus, and Mrs. Pritchard, the rector's widowed sister. Rain tapped against the narrow window. The room smelled of damp wool, ink, and cold stone. Beatrice removed token number 47 from the fastened inner pocket of her reticule. The chipped ivory disc had not left her possession since the assembly. She placed it beside the counterfoil entry. Reverend Ainsley read aloud the identifying features. Read number 47. Wheatsheaf stamp. Chip at the lower edge. Mr. Hale examined it without lifting it from the table. Mrs. Pritchard confirmed the same description. Beatrice then wrapped the token in clean linen, folded the cloth twice, and placed the packet inside a thick envelope. Reverend Ainsley closed the flap with red wax. Beatrice pressed no personal seal into it. Instead, all 3 witnesses wrote their initials across the join where paper met wax. "From this moment," she said, "Reverend Ainsley holds the token in trust. It is not in my possession, His Grace's possession, or Belgrave's possession." The rector accepted the packet in both hands. "I will place it in the church iron chest." They watched him cross to the corner cupboard, unlock the outer door, and withdraw a second key from beneath his waistcoat. The iron chest stood inside upon a stone shelf. He placed the sealed packet within, closed the lid, turned the key, and returned both keys to separate locations, one upon his person and one in the locked vestry cabinet. The counterfoil book went into the same chest. "The reimbursement voucher?" Beatrice asked. Mr. Norton opened his leather case just enough to show the folded original without removing it. "In my custody, Your Grace." It returns directly to the Belgrave Estate Office Strongbox after this meeting. Its signatures remain unchanged. Lady Fenwick's certification and Sir Marcus Thane's countersignature remain plainly visible. No erasure, tear, or amendment. Mr. Hale wrote the statement into the inventory. Beatrice reviewed the sequence aloud. The distribution was declared closed. Token 47 remained in Lady Fenwick's walnut box. I removed it afterward. The counterfoil later recorded it as distributed. Sir Marcus countersigned reimbursement for all 80 tokens 2 days later. Mrs. Bell states that 47 was never redeemed. Reverend Ainsley's face tightened. That account requires witnesses to time, not merely documents. Exactly. Beatrice placed 3 names on a fresh sheet. We need proof of when my mother ended the distribution, when I approached the box, and when the voucher reached Sir Marcus. Edmund looked at the first name. Joseph Pike. He stood by the side aisle at the wedding and served at the market distribution. He may have seen enough. He is employed by Lady Fenwick, Reverend Ainsley said. Which is why he may be afraid. Beatrice wrote the second name. Mrs. Bell can prove non-redemption and the altered bakery total. She wrote the third. The parish clerk can prove when he marked the final line, though he may claim he merely followed instruction. Mr. Norton closed the leather case. I can arrange for each of them to be brought here. No, Beatrice said. You may invite them. You may not compel them. A knock sounded at the vestry door. The church verger entered with a folded message addressed to Reverend Ainsley. He read it, then looked toward Beatrice. Mrs. Bell says she will not testify. Edmund's expression hardened. Why? The note gives no reason. Mr. Norton's eye shifted to Beatrice's list. Sir Marcus controls her lease. Before anyone could answer, a second messenger arrived from Fenwick Dower House. This one carried no letter. He brought news spoken plainly enough that every person in the vestry heard it. Lady Fenwick had dismissed Joseph Pike without wages that morning. Sir Marcus's steward had visited Mrs. Bell within the same hour and demanded immediate payment of an old lease charge previously allowed to stand. Edmund moved toward the door. Beatrice stepped into his path. He stopped before touching her. They are silencing witnesses, he said. Yes. Then what do you want me to do? Keep them physically safe. Do not instruct them, purchase them, or threaten anyone in return. His hand closed once at his sides. And if Sir Marcus reaches Joseph first? Then we learn where Joseph has gone. She looked at Reverend Ainsley. The evidence is secured. Now we secure the people without making them ours. Edmund held her gaze. The anger in him did not disappear, but it changed direction. I will not make another choice in your name. Beatrice stepped aside. Mr. Norton left with him to locate Joseph, while she remained in the vestry to finish the inventory. They had not been gone 20 minutes when a groom returned from Fenwick Dower House with the final piece of news. Joseph Pike had already disappeared. Joseph Pike had not vanished into danger. He had vanished into employment. By noon the following day, Mr. Norton learned that a carrier bound for Salisbury had taken on one additional passenger at the King's Arms, a coaching inn 3 miles beyond Nethercombe. The description matched Joseph exactly: young, narrow-faced, wearing a brown coat too thin for the season and carrying one canvas bag. Lady Fenwick had dismissed him without wages. Sir Marcus's steward had then offered him work in another county, provided he departed before evening. Beatrice did not wait for the Belgrave carriage to be made grand enough for a duchess. She took the smaller estate chaise with Edmund, Mr. Norton, and a married housemaid for propriety. The road was wet from overnight rain, and the wheels struck every rut hard enough to make speech difficult. Edmund sat opposite her, one gloved hand braced against the leather strap. He had said little since the news arrived. His anger had settled into a silence Beatrice recognized. It was the silence of a man deciding which order would solve the problem fastest. You will not offer Joseph a position before he speaks, she said. Edmund looked at her. I know. And you will not promise wages, housing, or protection in exchange for testimony. I know. You are displeased. I am considering the difference between protection and purchase. There is one. Yes. He glanced through the rain-streaked window. I am beginning to understand how often powerful men pretend not to see it. The King's Arms stood beside the turnpike with its painted sign creaking above the yard. A carrier's cart waited near the stable arch, piled with covered parcels and household trunks. Joseph stood beneath the eaves holding his canvas bag. He looked younger out of livery. Fear had removed the practiced stillness expected of a footman and left him with the uncertain posture of a man who had lost both income and reference in a single morning. When he saw Beatrice descend, he stepped backward. Your Grace, I have not come to force you back to Fenwick Dower House. His eyes moved to Edmund, then to Mr. Norton. Sir Marcus's steward said Belgrave would ruin me if I spoke. Edmund's expression hardened, but he remained silent. Beatrice took one step closer, leaving enough distance that Joseph did not feel surrounded. No one here will require you to speak. I need to know only whether you are leaving by choice. Joseph looked toward the carrier's cart. The steward offered me a place with a household near Salisbury. It is not much, but it is work. Why was it offered? He said a man who knew when to forget things could be useful. The words hung beneath the inn roof. Edmund's hand closed once at his side. Beatrice kept her eyes on Joseph. Did he tell you what to forget? The market square. Joseph swallowed. And the voucher. Beatrice felt the shape of the case tighten. What did you see in the market square? Joseph glanced toward the inn door, where two ostlers had paused to listen. Not here. Reverend Ainsley's parlour was less than 4 miles away, but Joseph refused to enter Belgrave land until his statement was complete. Beatrice accepted the condition. They returned to St. Anne's instead, where Reverend Ainsley, Mrs. Pritchard, and Mr. Hale witnessed the account. Token number 47 remained sealed in the church iron chest. No one opened the chest. The counterfoil book remained sealed there beside it. Mr. Norton had already returned the original reimbursement voucher to the Belgrave Estate Office strongbox after the inventory. He brought no evidence into the room, only a blank sheet, ink, and the knowledge of where the voucher remained. Joseph stood near the vestry window while Reverend Ainsley sat at the table. Speak in your own words, Beatrice said. Nothing will be added. Joseph rubbed his thumb across the seam of his canvas bag. Lady Fenwick told the clerk to close the distribution. She said the remaining loaves were accounted for. I heard her. Reverend Ainsley wrote slowly. What happened next? Miss Fenwick set down her basket and went to the walnut box. She took one token after the clerk had marked the last line. Did you see the number? Not then. I saw the chip when she held it out to Mr. Wycliffe. Joseph's gaze flickered toward Edmund. His Grace. Edmund did not correct him. And the voucher? Beatrice asked. 2 days later, Lady Fenwick gave it to me folded and sealed. She told me to carry it to Sir Marcus Thane. I waited in his hall while he read it. He asked whether all 80 tokens had been distributed. I said I did not know. He told me the committee knew, and that was sufficient. Then he signed it. Reverend Ainsley stopped writing. Did you see the signature? Yes. His clerk sanded the ink before the paper was folded again. Did Sir Marcus alter the figures? Not while I was there. The answer mattered because it limited what Joseph could prove. Beatrice nodded. You are not being asked to claim more than you witnessed. Joseph's shoulders lowered slightly. I will sign only if it is read back to me. It will be. Reverend Ainsley finished the statement, then read every line aloud. Joseph corrected one phrase. He had seen Beatrice approach the box, not the exact instant her fingers entered it. The correction was made in the margin and initialed by Joseph, Reverend Ainsley, and Mr. Hale. Only then did Joseph sign. Edmund waited until the ink dried before speaking. You may take the Salisbury position if you wish, Joseph looked startled. Your Grace? Or Mr. Norton can arrange safe lodging while you seek other work. The choice is yours. It is not payment for your statement. The statement was completed before I made the offer, and everyone present has witnessed that order. Joseph looked at Beatrice. She inclined her head. Your account belongs to you. So does your future. He chose temporary lodging at a small inn beyond Sir Marcus's property and asked for 2 days to decide what work he wanted. That afternoon, Beatrice and Edmund visited Mrs. Bell's bakery without entering through the public shop. Mrs. Bell received them in the small room above the ovens, where the warmth gathered beneath the ceiling and made the windows mist. Her sister remained beside her. The lease charge is due by Friday, Mrs. Bell said. It was never demanded before. Sir Marcus's steward told me that if I cannot pay, the rooms and ovens will be offered elsewhere. Edmund stood near the mantel. I can cancel every Thane contract with Belgrave before nightfall. Beatrice turned toward him. No, he is using those contracts to frighten witnesses. And if you cancel them now, he will say we punished him before the evidence was heard. He will say that whatever we do. Then let him lie without giving him a useful truth to stand beside. Edmund's jaw tightened. Mrs. Bell may lose her livelihood while we preserve appearances. We preserve the credibility of her choice. Once she gives her account freely, protection can follow without looking like purchase. Mrs. Bell looked between them. I will speak. Beatrice faced her. Not because you fear losing Belgrave's favour. No, not because his Grace will secure the lease. No promise has been made. Mrs. Bell lifted her chin. I will speak because Sir Marcus altered the count and expects fear to keep the number true. Edmund lowered his gaze, accepting both the courage and the boundary. By evening, Sir Marcus had issued his own public notice. It claimed that ducal servants were roaming the county, removing former household employees, intimidating shopkeepers, and constructing testimony against respected committee members. The accusation reached Belgrave before supper. Lady Fenwick's letter arrived with it. Beatrice opened the letter alone in the smaller morning room. Her mother offered to end the accusations on 3 conditions. Edmund must restore the repayment offer, Beatrice must persuade him to provide Lady Fenwick with a permanent ducal allowance, and the entire matter must be described publicly as a misunderstanding caused by Beatrice's impulsiveness. Beatrice read the page twice. The cruelty was almost less painful than the calculation. Her mother did not want reconciliation. She wanted continued access to obedience, now dressed in ducal silk. Edmund waited outside until Beatrice invited him in. The blue scarf lay folded over his arm because he had been carrying it from his private sitting room to the West Wing wardrobe when the message came. He did not place it on her furniture. What does she want? He asked. Beatrice handed him the letter. He read it without comment, then returned it. It is evidence of motive. Yes. Will you use it? Not unless we need it. The false reimbursement can be proved without displaying every private ugliness. She folded the letter and locked it inside her desk. I will not become my mother by mistaking total humiliation for justice. Edmund looked at her for a long moment. What do you need from me now? Beatrice saw no command waiting behind the question. Only readiness. 3 nights, she said. At the sexton's cottage. His expression changed. Why? Because I need to know whether the man I married there was real. She looked at the blue scarf over his arm. No servants inside. No title between us. Only the truth you should have given me before the vows. Edmund held her gaze. And if the truth is not enough, then at least the choice will finally be mine. The sexton's cottage looked smaller than Beatrice remembered, though nothing about it had changed. Its low roof crouched beside the churchyard wall, and the narrow windows held the last grey light of evening. Inside, the single parlour smelled faintly of soot, dry wood, and the lavender polish Reverend Ainsley's sister used on the table. Edmund had sent no servants into the rooms. 2 Belgrave men remained beyond the lane, far enough away to preserve privacy and close enough to answer if danger came. Beatrice saw no liveried coat, no ducal carriage, no silver service. Only the small trunk she had packed herself, Edmund's worn travelling bag, and the blue wool scarf folded across the back of the same wooden chair where he had once sat as a man with no visible rank. Token number 47 remained sealed inside the church iron chest with the counterfoil book. The original reimbursement voucher remained in the Belgrave estate office strongbox under Abel Norton's custody. Lady Fenwick's letter remained locked inside Beatrice's desk at Belgrave. Nothing of the case had travelled with them. That had been Beatrice's condition. She had not come to investigate evidence. She had come to examine a marriage. Edmund closed the cottage door behind them and waited. "Which room do you want?" he asked. "The bedchamber." "Then I will sleep here." He indicated the narrow settle beneath the window. "There is another small room beside the kitchen. It leaks. You remembered. I noticed the basin beneath the ceiling when Reverend Ainsley showed me the cottage before the wedding." Edmund gave a slight nod. "The settle will do." He did not turn sacrifice into a performance. He carried her trunk to the bedchamber, set it inside the threshold, and stepped away before she entered. When she returned, he had removed his coat and rolled his sleeves to light the fire. The old scar across his left palm caught the glow whenever he struck the steel. His first attempt produced sparks but no flame. The second smoked. The third made him swear under his breath. "I thought cavalry captains could light fires," Beatrice said. He glanced over his shoulder. "Cavalry captains order someone else to do it. And dukes. Apparently they freeze with greater dignity." The corner of her mouth moved before she could prevent it. Edmund saw the almost smile and looked back at the hearth rather than claim it. At last the kindling caught. He placed the kettle over the flames, then carried water from the pump in 2 buckets because the larger one leaked near the handle. He made no speech about humility. He merely returned with damp hair at his temples and mud at the edge of his boots. By supper, they had bread, cheese, apples, and tea prepared badly enough that Beatrice quietly remade it. They ate across from one another at the small table while wind moved along the churchyard wall. No servant announced courses. No portrait watched them. No title entered the room unless one of them carried it there. "Ask," Edmund said. Beatrice set down her cup. "Everything?" "Everything I should have answered before the vows." She studied his face. "When did you learn you had inherited?" 11 weeks before the market distribution. I was in London settling military accounts when Norton found me. "Did you come to Belgrave immediately?" "Within 3 days. I stayed openly for a fortnight, then left publicly for London. I returned through another road and took the cottage under my own name." "Why your own name?" "Because I would not risk invalidating a lawful agreement or forcing Reverend Ainsley to lie. Wycliffe is mine. The title was what I concealed. And the clothes. Bought second-hand in Winchester. The coat was already mended. The boots were mine from service. Did you ever lack food while you were here?" His silence answered before his words. "Not truly. I had coin. I chose not to use it when using it would have exposed the disguise." Beatrice's fingers tightened around the cup. "Then the hunger I saw was partly chosen. The emptiness was real. The danger was not." He did not soften it. "I had eaten little for 2 days because I was observing the distribution routes and avoiding the inn. But I could have ended it whenever I wished. I could not have ended the consequences of marrying you whenever I wished." "No," he looked directly at her. "That is the difference I refuse to see." She rose and crossed to the window. The churchyard beyond the glass had disappeared into darkness. "Why did you fear the title so much?" "Because every conversation changed after I inherited. Men who had ignored me remembered friendship. Women who had never looked twice at a scarred officer began discussing Vainhurst bloodlines." His voice remained controlled, but strain moved beneath it. I had spent years being useful because I could ride, command, survive, or endure. Suddenly I was valuable without doing anything. I began to distrust every kindness attached to my name. So you tested mine? Yes. Without telling me? Yes. And when I passed? He looked down. I moved the standard. I told myself I needed one more day. Then another. I wanted to be certain that you chose Edmund Wycliffe. Beatrice turned from the window. You wanted certainty more than you wanted my consent. The words entered the room without force, yet Edmund seemed to feel them physically. Yes. He stood, but did not approach. I deprived you of informed choice. Not by lying about my name or vows, but by withholding the fact that would alter your home, duties, risks, and every expectation surrounding the marriage. I told myself that truth would come later and remain true. That was cowardice disguised as principle. Beatrice's throat tightened. This was the apology she had demanded without knowing whether he could give it. No explanation followed. No appeal to war, loneliness, or fear. He let the harm stand. And the repayment offer, she asked. The same failure in another form. I saw the room turn against you and reached for the largest weapon I possessed. Money. I believed I could protect the relief fund and shield you from accusation. Instead, I made your innocence look like a debt I could settle. You made me sound expensive rather than truthful. I know. Do you? I know because I watched your face when I spoke, and because you left rather than let me purchase the end of the question. He drew a slow breath. I am sorry. Not because my intention failed. Because I chose in your name after promising I would not. The fire settled with a soft crack. Beatrice crossed back to the table and Saturday. If I had refused to come here, what would you have done? Waited. For how long? As long as you required. And if I chose a separate life? I would provide one without conditions. Because I am your wife. Because I harmed your freedom. The law may keep the marriage intact. It does not give me the right to demand your affection. Beatrice looked at the plain ring on her hand. I still love the man who stood beside me in the market square. Edmund's face changed, but he did not move. I love the man who asked whether I meant what I said. The man who offered his hand and waited. The man who told Sir Marcus that silence was not permission. Her voice lowered. But I do not know whether he was real or merely the finest part of your disguise. He was real. Then prove it without performing him. Edmund held her gaze. I do not know how. That may be the first honest answer you have given without already knowing how it would be received. The next 2 days did not resolve them through grand confession. They carried water, repaired a loose shutter, walked the churchyard in cold morning air, and discussed the evidence order only when Beatrice invited it. Edmund burned the porridge once and accepted her laughter without defensiveness. He asked before entering the bedchamber to repair the window latch. He slept on the settle and never crossed the threshold at night. On the third evening, wind drove rain against the roof. Beatrice woke after midnight to a sound from the parlor. Not a shout. A broken breath. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and opened the door. Edmund sat upright on the settle, one hand gripping the blanket, his face turned toward something no longer in the room. Sweat darkened his hair despite the cold. Edmund. He flinched, then recognized her. I'm awake. You were dreaming. Yes. Water. He shook his head. His scarred hand trembled once before he closed it. I'm sorry I disturbed you. You did not. She came nearer, but stopped beyond his reach. May I sit? Yes. She sat beside him, leaving a space between them. For several breaths, neither spoke. Waterloo, she asked. Afterward. A field hospital. Men calling for orders when there were none left to give. His voice was rough. I kept choosing who received the surgeon first. I still hear the ones I did not choose. Beatrice understood then why command had become his refuge. Orders had once divided life from death. He had carried that instinct into rooms where no one needed saving from battle, only respect. She lifted one hand. "May I touch you?" Edmund looked at her as though permission itself had wounded him. "Yes." Beatrice placed her palm against his cheek. He closed his eyes. She moved closer and wrapped both arms around him. For one suspended moment, he remained still, allowing her to withdraw. Then his arms came around her carefully, not pulling, not claiming, only holding what she had freely offered. His breath steadied against her shoulder. Beatrice felt no title between them. No crowd. No debt. Only a man who had survived by controlling everything and now trembled because she had chosen to stay. When she drew back, the blue scarf lay folded on the chair beside the hearth. She rose, took it, and returned. Edmund watched her without speaking. Beatrice draped the scarf around his shoulders and crossed the ends lightly over his chest. "The man I gave this to was real," she said. Emotion moved across his face without defense. "Beatrice, do not ask for more tonight." "I won't." In the morning, they stood beside the cottage door while the rain cleared over St. Anne's Tower. Edmund offered his hand. Beatrice took it. "I will remain your wife by choice," she said. Hope entered his expression, but she continued before it could become certainty. "I will not declare love publicly or privately until we can stand together without you standing in front of me." His fingers tightened gently around hers. "Then I will stand where you place me." Beatrice looked toward the road back to Belgrave. "Beside me," she said. "Learn to remain there." When Beatrice and Edmund returned to Belgrave, the county committee was already waiting in the smaller council chamber, summoned by a notice Edmund had sent before leaving the sexton's cottage. The room was formal but not grand, with no raised platform and no Wycliffe portraits positioned to remind anyone who possessed the greater rank. Reverend Ainsley sat near the window. Mr. Norton stood beside the locked leather case that held no evidence, only the inventory stating where each item remained. Token number 47 and the counterfoil book were still sealed inside the church iron chest. The original reimbursement voucher remained in the Belgrave estate office strongbox under Norton's custody. Lady Fenwick's private letter remained locked inside Beatrice's desk. Nothing had moved. Nothing had been destroyed. Nothing had changed except the manner in which Edmund entered the room. He did not walk ahead of Beatrice. He waited until she crossed the threshold, then took the chair beside hers. Several subscribers looked surprised when he remained seated rather than assuming the head of the table. Sir Marcus was absent. Lady Fenwick had declined the summons. Their empty places gave the meeting a tension sharper than open hostility. Edmund rose only when every person had settled. At the last assembly, he said, "I offered Belgrave money to repay every disputed sum before the evidence had been heard. I made that offer without the Duchess's consent. I intended to protect the relief fund and prevent hardship. Instead, I implied that truth could be replaced by payment and that my wife's innocence could be treated as an expense. The offer was wrong. I withdrew it in writing. I withdraw it again before this committee." No one interrupted. Edmund continued. "No ducal judgment will precede the evidence. No contract will be cancelled, no lease altered, and no witness rewarded before the facts are established. Her Grace will determine the order in which those facts are heard." Saturday. Beatrice felt the eyes in the room turn toward her, but they no longer carried the same curiosity as before. They waited. That difference mattered. "The final relief meeting will not take place in this chamber," she said. "It will take place in Nethercombe Market Square, before the granary doors." A landowner near the end of the table frowned. "In public?" "The accusation was made publicly. The records concern public charity. The people whose need has been discussed without their presence should be permitted to hear how their relief was managed." Reverend Ainsley inclined his head. "And the order of evidence?" Beatrice unfolded a single page. First, Reverend Ainsley will produce the sealed packet containing token number 47 and describe its custody. Second, he will produce the counterfall book. Third, Mr. Norton will bring the original reimbursement voucher directly from the estate strongbox. Fourth, Joseph Pike's witness statement will be read. Fifth, Mrs. Bell will speak regarding redemption and the altered bakery count. I will speak last. One subscriber shifted uneasily. Sir Marcus will challenge every witness. He is entitled to ask questions, Beatrice said. He is not entitled to invent answers. Edmund did not utter a word. His silence felt deliberate, not absent. When the committee departed, Reverend Ainsley remained long enough to confirm that the granary meeting could be announced after Sunday service. Mr. Norton received instructions to arrange benches, clerks, and unobtrusive estate protection. No servant was to coach a witness or carry private messages to Lady Fenwick. By late afternoon, the council chamber had emptied. Beatrice returned to the smaller morning room overlooking the service court. Edmund followed only after she invited him. The blue scarf was folded around his neck beneath his coat, visible at the collar. Seeing it there no longer made her question which version of him had worn it. Both had. He closed the door but remained near it. "Will you use your mother's letter?" he asked. Beatrice looked toward the locked desk where it remained. No, it proves she offered to end the accusation in exchange for an allowance. It proves motive. It does not prove the false certification. It may help the public understand her. I do not need the public to understand every private ugliness. She rested one hand on the desk. If the voucher, token, witnesses, and timing are not enough, then the case is not strong enough. I will not expose what is unnecessary merely because she has tried to expose me. Edmund's gaze softened. You still protect her? No. I protect myself from becoming like her. He accepted the correction. For several moments, only the sounds from the service court reached them. A cart rolled beneath the arch. A groom called quietly to a horse. Somewhere in the house, a clock struck 4. Edmund crossed to the window but stopped several feet from Beatrice. There is another matter I must settle before the inquiry. What matter? Your freedom after it. She turned toward him. He spoke carefully. If you decide that remaining at Belgrave is not what you want, I will arrange a separate residence of your choosing. You will have an income secured in your own name, no required public duties, and no expectation that separation will be concealed for my reputation. Beatrice watched him. Are you asking me to leave? No, the answer came at once. I am making certain that staying is not the only safe choice. And if I go? His left hand opened at his side, the old scar pale across his palm. I will not pursue you. I will not use the law, the household, or society to compel your return. I will answer questions truthfully and accept whatever judgment follows. You would give me freedom without knowing whether I would forgive you. It would not be freedom if I gave it only in exchange for forgiveness. The word settled between them. Beatrice had expected the offer to hurt. Instead, it clarified what had changed. At the church porch, Edmund had asked her to trust the truth of his intentions. In the assembly room, he had tried to spend authority on her behalf. Now he offered something that cost him certainty and demanded nothing in return. I do not want a separate residence, she said. He went still. Beatrice. I wanted the choice. I needed to know that you would restore it even if the answer wounded you. She stepped closer. You have. Hope entered his face, restrained by caution. Does that mean you intend to remain? Yes. Because the marriage is legal. No, her voice softened. Because I choose you. Edmund drew one breath and looked down briefly, as if the relief were almost too private to show. When he raised his eyes again, the control was there, but it no longer concealed everything. I love you, he said. I love you as the woman who fed a stranger when everyone else measured his worth. I love you as the woman who challenged a duke, refused his money, and made him understand that protection without freedom is another kind of command. I love you, Beatrice, and I do not expect those words to erase what I did. Emotion tightened her throat. She had promised herself that love would not be declared until they could stand side by side without him moving in front of her. They stood that way now. No witnesses. No title between them. No debt waiting beneath the confession. I love you, Edmund, she said. His face changed with a tenderness so unguarded that she felt it like warmth. Not because you were poor. Not because you are powerful. I love the man who waited for my answer, and the man who learned to wait again after he forgot how. He did not reach for her. May I touch you? Yes. Edmund lifted one hand and rested his fingertips against her cheek. The touch was careful, intentional, and warm. Beatrice leaned into it by her own choice. His thumb moved once beneath her eye. May I kiss you? He asked. Yes. He bent slowly enough that she could have turned away. She did not. Their first kiss was gentle, almost solemn, carrying more truth than urgency. Beatrice felt his restraint, his hope, and the question he continued to leave open even after permission had been given. She answered by placing one hand against his chest. When they parted, Edmund rested his forehead lightly against hers but did not claim another kiss. Thank you, he whispered. Beatrice almost smiled. Do not thank me as though affection were charity. A breath of laughter escaped him. Then I will say nothing. That would be unusual. Before he could reply, she caught the edge of his coat, rose on her toes, and kissed him again. The second kiss was brief but unmistakably hers. When she stepped back, Edmund looked as though every title he possessed had become irrelevant. They spent the evening reviewing only practical arrangements for the inquiry. No new evidence appeared. No dramatic confession arrived. Sir Marcus's supporters were expected to challenge Joseph's employment, Mrs. Bell's fear, and Beatrice's admitted removal of the token. Edmund promised only physical safety and an orderly hearing. Beatrice locked Lady Fenwick's letter away again. At dawn the next morning, Mr. Norton entered the breakfast room before the first tray had been cleared. Mud marked the hem of his coat. Your Graces, he said, the granary doors have been chained. Edmund set down his cup. By whose order? Sir Marcus Thane's. He claims committee authority to prevent distribution until the accusation of theft is resolved. Beatrice rose before Edmund could speak. Beyond the windows, the sky over Nethercombe was beginning to pale. Then the people will already be gathering, she said. Edmund came to stand beside her. What do you wish me to do? Beatrice met his eyes. Remove the chain from Belgrave property. Then stand beside me and let me open the case. By the time the Belgrave carriage reached Nethercombe, the market square was already crowded. Tenants stood beside laborious, parish widows, tradesmen, subscribers, and neighbouring gentry who had come less for bread than for judgment. The granary doors rose behind a low stone platform at the far end of the square. A heavy chain had been looped through the iron handles and secured with a new brass padlock. Sir Marcus Thane stood before it in a dark riding coat, surrounded by 2 committee clerks and several men who owed him leases, wages, or favour. Lady Fenwick waited beneath the market cross in black silk, composed enough to suggest she had arranged the morning rather than merely attended it. Reverend Ainsley stood near the church path with Mrs. Bell, Joseph Pike, and Mr. Hale. Abel Norton had arrived separately from Belgrave's estate office, carrying the original reimbursement voucher inside a locked leather case. Token number 47 and the counterfoil book remained in the church iron chest. They had not yet been removed. Edmund descended first, then offered Beatrice his hand. She took it and stepped onto the wet cobbles. The blue wool scarf showed above the collar of his greatcoat. Her plain gold wedding ring caught the weak morning light. Sir Marcus raised his voice before they had crossed half the square. Your Grace, the committee has suspended distribution until the theft of parish property is resolved. Edmund did not look at the chain. He looked at Sir Marcus. Belgrave owns this granary. The Relief Committee governs its charitable use. The committee does not possess the right to deny food through a lock placed without the owner's consent. Sir Marcus spread one hand toward the crowd. Then you intend to use ducal power to overturn committee authority before the evidence is heard? Edmund's expression remained controlled. No. I intend to remove a chain from my own door. The evidence will be heard before any judgment is enforced. He turned to Norton. Have it opened. Norton signaled 2 Belgrave workmen. One steadied the chain while the other used estate tools to remove the padlock without damaging the granary doors. Sir Marcus began to object, but Edmund lifted one hand. The grain will remain inside until the hearing is complete. No one is being denied order. They are being denied your lock. The chain fell to the stones with a hard metallic sound. Silence followed. Edmund stepped back from the platform and looked at Beatrice. He did not introduce her. He did not tell the crowd why she had come. He simply gave her the place she had asked to occupy. Beatrice climbed the 2 stone steps alone. Her mother's gaze followed her with the cold attention once used to correct posture, tone, and obedience. Sir Marcus stood with his shoulders squared, confident that Beatrice's admitted act would destroy whatever documents followed. Beatrice faced the square. I will begin with the part no one disputes, she said. I took token number 47 from Lady Fenwick's charity box. A murmur moved through the crowd. Lady Fenwick lowered her eyes with practiced sorrow. Beatrice continued. I took it after the bread distribution had been declared complete. I took it after my mother refused food to a man because he could not provide the respectable parish history she required. There were loaves remaining. There were tokens remaining. I gave one of those tokens to Edmund Wycliffe because I believed he was hungry. Sir Marcus stepped forward. Then the theft is admitted. Beatrice turned toward him. The act is admitted. The meaning is not yours to decide before the facts are heard. A few faces in the crowd lifted. She looked toward Reverend Ainsley. Please bring the evidence. The rector crossed to St. Anne's with Mr. Hale and Mrs. Pritchard beside him. The square waited while the church door opened and closed. No one filled the silence with speech. When Reverend Ainsley returned, he carried the sealed packet containing token number 47 and the counterfoil book beneath one arm. He mounted the platform and spoke clearly. The token was transferred to my custody by Her Grace before witnesses. It was wrapped in linen, sealed in this envelope, and placed in the church iron chest. The counterfoil book was secured in the same chest. Neither has left church custody until this morning. He showed the initials crossing the wax seal. Mr. Hale and Mrs. Pritchard confirmed them. Reverend Ainsley broke the seal before the assembled witnesses, unfolded the linen, and placed the chipped ivory token on the table. The faded red number and wheat sheaf stamp were plainly visible. Beatrice did not touch it. Open the counterfoil, she said. The rector turned to the recorded entry. Token 47 is marked as distributed within Lady Fenwick's group. Lady Fenwick lifted her chin. Which proves that my daughter removed a token already assigned to relief. No, Beatrice said. It proves only that the committee later certified it as distributed. She turned toward Mrs. Bell. The baker approached with her sister beside her. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice did not. Was token 47 redeemed at your counter? Beatrice asked. It wasn't. Are you certain? Yes. The chip caught my eye when His Grace showed it to me weeks later. No damaged token with that number ever entered my redemption drawer. How many loaves did your own count show? Mrs. Bell gave the number. It was fewer than 80. And what happened to that count? Sir Marcus's clerk adjusted the account upward. He said the committee had certified all 80, so the bakery total must agree. Sir Marcus laughed once. A tradeswoman facing financial difficulty now remembers figures that absolve the Duchess. Mrs. Bell turned toward him. I remember the figures because your steward demanded my lease charge after I refused to forget them. The crowd stirred more sharply. Sir Marcus's face hardened. Beatrice looked toward Joseph Pike. He came forward in his plain brown coat, no longer wearing Fenwick livery. Reverend Ainsley unfolded his witness statement. "Joseph, did Lady Fenwick declare the distribution closed before I approached the charity box?" Beatrice asked. "Yes, Your Grace." "Did you see me take the token?" "I saw you approach the box after the clerk marked the final line. I saw the chipped token in your hand when you offered it to His Grace." "Did you later carry a reimbursement voucher?" "Yes. Lady Fenwick gave it to me 2 days afterward. I took it to Sir Marcus." "What did he ask?" "Whether all 80 tokens had been distributed." I said I did not know. He said the committee knew, and that was sufficient. Then he signed. Sir Marcus's supporters began whispering among themselves. He raised his voice. "A dismissed servant repeating words prepared by ducal influence cannot establish fraud." His words were given before any position was offered, Reverend Ainsley said. They were written, read back, corrected in his own presence, and witnessed by Mr. Hale and me. Beatrice turned to Norton. He unlocked the leather case and removed the original reimbursement voucher, carrying it directly to the table. "This document remained in the Belgrave Estate Office strongbox until this morning," he said. "It bears no erasure or alteration." He unfolded it. Lady Fenwick's certification appeared beneath the full count of 80 tokens. Sir Marcus's countersignature stood below it. Beatrice let the crowd see the document before she spoke. "Belgrave reimbursed all 80 loaves. Token 47 remained in my mother's box after she declared the distribution complete. It was never redeemed at Mrs. Bell's bakery. Yet it was certified as distributed and paid for 2 days later." Lady Fenwick stepped forward. "Then it was a clerical error." "A clerical error made after you personally declared the work complete?" Beatrice asked. "The parish clerk may have misunderstood the totals." Reverend Ainsley shook his head. "The committee chairs certified the final count. The clerk recorded what he was instructed to record." Sir Marcus pointed toward the voucher. "Lady Fenwick relied upon others. I relied upon her certification." Beatrice met his gaze. "You asked whether all 80 were distributed. Joseph told you he did not know. You signed anyway. Because the committee's reputation was beyond question. That is not evidence. It is precisely what allowed the false number to pass." Lady Fenwick's composure cracked. "You would destroy your own mother over one loaf." Beatrice looked at her across the table where token 47 rested. "No. I would stop you from calling control charity and reputation proof." The square fell silent. Then Edmund stepped forward, but he did not mount the platform. He remained below Beatrice. "Before this committee decides," he said, "I must state my own failure. At the earlier assembly, I offered Belgrave money to repay the disputed amount before the evidence was heard. I intended to protect the poor and my wife. Instead, I nearly used wealth to conceal truth a second time. Her Grace refused that solution. She required proof. Everything heard today exists because she would not allow rank, including mine, to purchase silence." His admission shifted the room more deeply than any command could have done. The senior subscribers withdrew briefly with Reverend Ainsley and Mr. Hale. When they returned, the decision was read aloud. Lady Fenwick and Sir Marcus were removed from the Relief Committee. Both were required to repay the amounts improperly reimbursed under their certification. Belgrave would terminate Sir Marcus's relief supply contract after the committee finding entered the record. Mrs. Bell's lease pressure would be reviewed separately, with no promise tied to her testimony. Lady Fenwick lost her position as public patroness and any right to speak in Beatrice's name. Sir Marcus attempted one final protest, but several men who had stood beside him moved away. His authority had depended upon appearing respectable. The evidence had made respectability answerable. Beatrice looked toward the granary doors. "Open them." Norton pulled both doors wide. The scent of grain and clean wood entered the cold square. Clerks brought forward fresh counting sheets. Bread distribution began under an open system, with every numbered token recorded before witnesses. The first widow approached without being asked to perform gratitude. Beatrice stepped down from the platform. Edmund waited at the bottom. He offered his hand. He did not reach higher. He did not announce victory. Beatrice placed her hand in his before her mother, Sir Marcus, the subscribers, and the people of Nethercombe. His fingers closed around hers with quiet care. Behind them, the granary doors stood open. "Where do you wish our marriage to begin again?" he asked. Beatrice looked toward the road leading past St. Anne's and the small cottage beside the churchyard wall. Then she looked back at Belgrave's open granary. "Here," she said, "where no one has to become smaller to be helped." By March, the first pale shoots had begun to rise beneath the hedges around Nethercombe, though the morning still carried enough coal to whiten the granary roof. For months had passed since the committee judgment, and the changes at Belgrave were no longer promises written for public approval. They had become habits. Every relief token was now numbered before 2 witnesses. Every shopkeeper recorded redemption in an open ledger. Each Friday, Reverend Ainsley posted the weekly totals in the vestry where any parishioner could inspect them. No widow was required to praise the giver before receiving bread. No laborer was asked to display his hunger as proof of deserving it. The system was slower than the old one, less elegant, and far more honest. Beatrice considered that an improvement. Mrs. Bell remained above the bakery ovens under a secure long-term lease negotiated by the Reformed Committee after her testimony had been entered into the record. Belgrave had not gifted her the premises. She paid a fair rent under terms no single patron could suddenly withdraw. Joseph Pike now worked as an estate carrier by his own contract, driving a covered cart between Belgrave, Nethercombe, and Winchester twice each week. He had chosen the position only after refusing 2 others and negotiating higher winter wages with Mr. Norton. Edmund had accepted the negotiation without interference. Sir Marcus Thane had repaid his share of the improperly reimbursed funds, lost the Belgrave relief supply contract, and withdrawn almost entirely to his estate 7 miles away. Invitations that once arrived because people feared offending him had become less frequent. Men who had depended upon his approval now spoke of prudence and distance, as though they had never stood beside him before the chained granary doors. Beatrice took no pleasure in the cowardice of society. His consequence did not require her delight. Lady Fenwick no longer presided over parish charity or used Beatrice's name to secure influence. She remained at Fenwick Dower House with a reduced household and ample dignity, which she guarded more carefully than repentance. In February, she sent one restrained letter. There was no request for money and no accusation disguised as concern. She wrote that she had mistaken control for protection and obedience for love. She did not ask to be forgiven immediately. Beatrice read the letter twice before answering. She acknowledged it, then stated that any future contact must be truthful, respectful, and free from demands made in the name of family duty. She did not invite her mother to Belgrave. She did not close the door forever. Boundaries, she had learned, were not cruelty merely because another person disliked them. At Belgrave Park, Beatrice accepted selected duties as Duchess. She received tenants who wished to speak about estate matters, attended parish meetings, and reviewed the relief ledgers each month with Reverend Ainsley and Mr. Norton. She declined several grand London engagements without apology and refused to allow county ladies to turn her marriage into a fashionable tale of sudden elevation. When one visitor described her compassion as fortunate instinct, Beatrice answered that compassion without accountable systems could become vanity. The woman did not call again. Edmund laughed only after the carriage had passed beyond the gate. He had changed too, though not into a softer version of himself for public admiration. He remained observant, restrained, and capable of ending a dispute with one quiet sentence. The difference lay in what followed. He asked before deciding where another person's freedom was involved. He waited through answers he did not like. He still woke occasionally from dreams of Waterloo, but he no longer apologized for disturbing the night as though pain were misconduct. Sometimes Beatrice sat beside him until his breathing steadied. Sometimes he preferred the window open and silence. She learned not to make every wound a task. He learned that being loved did not require him to appear healed. The The sexton's cottage remained furnished beside St. Anne's, though Edmund no longer occupied it under concealment. They kept it as a private retreat, not as a shrine to suffering or disguise. No servant maintained the rooms daily. Mrs. Pritchard aired them each week and left fresh linen when requested. Edmund repaired the leaking bucket but not the uneven hearthstone. Beatrice insisted that some imperfections deserved to remain because they caused no harm and told the truth about the place. On an evening near the 6th month of their marriage, they went there alone. The sky had cleared after rain, leaving the churchyard grass dark and bright beneath the moon. Edmund carried a covered basket from the carriage while Beatrice unlocked the cottage. No servants followed them inside. The 2 Belgrave men assigned to the road remained beyond the lane, unseen. In the parlour, Edmund lit the fire correctly on his first attempt. Beatrice watched with exaggerated disappointment. "You are becoming unbearable." He glanced over his shoulder. "Because I can now light kindling. Because you look pleased with yourself. I'm a duke. Self-satisfaction is one of the few accomplishments expected of me. You once burned porridge. That accusation remains unproved. I ate the evidence." His smile appeared slowly, changing the severity of his face as it always did. They shared cold chicken, bread, apples, and a small cake Mrs. Bell had sent without charge, though Beatrice had returned payment through the committee account the next morning. They ate at the same narrow table where Edmund had once confessed the full harm of his concealment. The room no longer felt like a test. It felt chosen. After supper, Edmund hung his ducal greatcoat upon the wooden peg near the door. The mended blue wool scarf rested beside it, the old repairs visible against the darker cloth. Rank and poverty did not look like opposites there. They looked like 2 truths belonging to the same man. Beatrice touched the edge of the scarf. "Do you regret keeping this place?" Edmund asked. "No, do you regret marrying the man you believed lived here?" She turned to him. Firelight moved across the scar in his left palm as he rested one hand against the chair. "I regret that neither of us understood how difficult freedom would be. That is not the answer I feared. You feared I would say yes. Sometimes." He did not hide behind humor. "And now?" "Now I know regret and love can occupy the same memory without destroying each other." Beatrice stepped closer. "I do not regret choosing the man who waited in the market square. I do not regret demanding more from the Duke he became in my eyes. I had already become him. That was the problem." Edmund lowered his head with a small, rueful smile. "Yes." She placed her hand over his scarred palm. "I love you." His fingers closed gently around hers. "I love you too." He did not kiss her until she lifted her face. When he did, the kiss was warm, unhurried, and certain. Beatrice drew closer by her own choice, one hand resting against his chest while his other arm settled around her without pressure. Nothing needed to be proved. No one watched. When they parted, Edmund brushed his thumb across her cheek. "May our next anniversary contain fewer committees? That depends upon whether you chain any granary doors. I have learned better. You have learned to ask. That too." The next morning, they returned to Nethercombe before the first distribution. The granary doors stood open, and the new scale had been placed where every recipient could see its balance. Beside it, beneath a small square of glass, rested chipped ivory token number 47. After the inquiry, Reverend Ainsley had returned it to Beatrice. She had chosen not to keep it in a private drawer. The same faded red number, wheatsheaf stamp, and broken lower edge remained visible. Beneath the glass, a plain inscription read, "For need, not rank." Mrs. Bell stood near the bread table. Joseph arrived with flour from Winchester and carried the sacks inside before joining the open count. Reverend Ainsley entered each first number in the ledger. No one bowed to Beatrice before receiving a loaf unless courtesy moved them freely. Edmund's greatcoat protected him from the cold, but he had forgotten the scarf at the cottage. Beatrice had not. She took the mended blue wool from her basket and placed it around his neck. "You planned that," he said. "I anticipated your poor judgment. I'm surrounded by it. And corrected with remarkable patience. He offered his hand before they crossed the threshold. Beatrice looked at the open doors, the visible scale, and the token that had once carried accusation from her mother's box into Edmund's palm. It no longer belonged to secrecy, shame, or debt. She placed her hand in his, then stepped forward first and led him through the granary doors.